Last year, we held the first birthday celebration in honor of General Paik, and Miss Nami Park invited us into her home through Zoom, and she shared with us some family photos and mementos
Mm.
of her life with her father. It was truly unique and very memorable. She also introduced us to her nephew, U.S. Army Captain Christopher Peck. This year, Ms. Park has assembled a super team of distinguished gentlemen who knew General Peck at different times of his life and through different perspectives. They are General Kim Jae Chang, Mr. Joel McChristian Jr., Director Yu Kwang Jong. Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Nami Park traveled with her father throughout Europe, Asia, and North America, and she accompanied him in all his official visits to the United States. She received a Master of Education with an emphasis in mental retardation and early childhood education, and taught children in an orphanage with intellectual difficulties and autism for many years. She works as a volunteer with numerous nonprofit organizations in the US and Korea, including as a member of the KDVA Council of Advisors. She resides in Connecticut with her husband. They have a son, daughter, and 7 grandchildren. Okay, ma'am, your remarks, please.
Thank you, Steve. General Brooks and 정승조 장군님, and Steve, thank you for your lovely introduction. It is great to see you all again. I would also like to thank the Korea Defense Veterans Association for honoring my father, General Paik Sun-yup, on what would have been his 101st birthday. It's wonderful to be back this year speaking with the KDVA, and it's amazing to be joined by so many people who are committed to upholding the alliance between the Republic of Korea and the United States. The alliance meant so much to my father. He had a deep appreciation of the trust between these two nations and the decades of peace and stability it has created. He also understood how trust is built between nations. It starts by building trust between individuals. My father served alongside so many US service members on the battlefield. Those relationships were deeply meaningful to him on a personal level, but they were more than that. Those relationships helped shape the future of Rock Army. I would like to share some of my father's memories with you today, memories about his friendship. This is my way of honoring his legacy by paying tribute to the brave soldiers who meant so much to him. Many of those friendships were formed, tested, and strengthened during pivotal moments of the war. So really, I can't think of a better place to begin than Tabudong Battle of the Busan Perimeter in August 1950, the ROK's last line of defense. During the Battle of Tabudong, my father's ROK 1st Infantry Division was up against 4 North Korean divisions. After days of bloody battle, my father asked for support from the US 8th Army. A day later, Lieutenant Colonel McCandless, commander of the 27th Regiment of the US 25th Infantry Division, arrived. And my father became the first commander of a ROK Army unit to execute combined operation with the US forces. The battle was so fierce that the soldiers didn't have time to remove the enemy corpses. They piled so high that they became barricades. However, one day, Lieutenant Colonel McCandless was distraught and alarmed that Korean soldiers were rapidly retreating. He told my dad that he would have to withdraw if the retreat continued. My father was conscious that eyes of the coalition forces were upon him and his division. He knew that Without US support, the survival of the Republic of Korea was on the line. When my father arrived at the battlefield, soldiers were coming down the mountain. His only option was to command the battle himself. So with his thundering voice, he rallied his men and said, "If we keep retreating, our country will collapse. As we can see, US forces are fighting for us and relying on us. You fought very well till now. Let us give last push. I will lead the charge. Shoot me if I retreat." When these soldiers charged to regain ground, the enemy fled. Finally, my father's division became the first to break through enemy lines since the beginning of the North Koreans' invasion. They turned the tide of the war around. And they were also the first to arrive in the capital of North Korea, Pyongyang. After that Battle of Tapodong, my father and the late General Michaelis built a strong and lasting friendship. My father said that the first combined Korea-US operation was successful because it was based on credibility and mutual respect. That trust was just as important after the war ended. My father knew then that US support would be crucial to setting the Republic of Korea on a path forward. And the credibility and the relationship he built on the battlefield helped to make that a reality. One of my father's strongest advocates was General Van Fleet. During the general's stay in Korea as 8th Army commander, he gave my father every opportunity to prove himself and succeed. He ordered my father to rout the communist insurgents hiding in the mountains and to rebuild and modernize the ROK Second Corps. He handpicked my father to represent Korea's the armistice negotiations. He made sure that my father was the one to brief the President-elect Eisenhower on the urgency of doubling the size of the Korean army with proper US support. And unexpectedly, General Van Fleet recommended that President Seungman Lee choose my father as the Chief of Staff of Korea and the first four-star general in Korean history. His last wish before departing Korea. Over time, they forged a personal relationship. Often, General Van Fleet flew to the battlefield where my father was stationed just to sit with him, share his sandwiches with him, and enjoy his company. General Van Fleet, 28 years my father's senior, observed, guided, and supported my father in every possible way, as if he were his own son. And in my father's heart, General Van Fleet was the father he never had. During last year's KDVA webinar, I told you the story of my father's visit to see General Van Fleet at age 99 at his ranch in Polk City, Florida. General Ridgway and General Van Fleet wrote that my father has been tested again and again to the point where he had become a faultless soldier. On the other hand, my father was deeply grateful to the US generals for giving him the opportunity to prove what he and his soldiers were capable of. Again, this mutual trust was essential, and it would remain essential as they worked to secure the Mutual Defense Treaty. During a visit my father made to the US in May 1953, he went to see his friend and comrade, Admiral Ali Burke. Admiral used to call himself the artillery commander of the Republic of Korea First Corps when my father was the corps commander. During that visit, they shared their concern about the future of South Korea after the armistice. The general told my father that the Mutual Defense Treaty would guarantee Korea's national security if this was attainable. So the first thing, the next morning, my father went to see the Chief of Staff, General Collins, and asked him to set up a meeting with President Eisenhower. General Collins told my father it was unlikely. No US president had ever met with another country's chief of staff, and if Eisenhower did, it would set a precedent. My father responded that the Korea chief of staff could not be compared with other chief of staff. He and his men had fought and died side by side with the US soldiers. My father knew that Korea's national security was at stake. So he decided to wait outside of General Collins' office. He waited the entire day until nightfall, until General Collins, realizing my father's determination, managed to arrange the meeting. So the next day, my father had a private meeting with President Eisenhower. There was not even an interpreter present. My father made a case for mutual defense treaty and an economic reconstruction package. After a passionate conversation on the value of an alliance between both nations, President Eisenhower agreed in principle. Well, 5 months later, on October 1st, 1953, the Mutual Defense Treaty between the United States and the Republic of Korea was signed. You see, the bond and friendship between Admiral Burke and my father made the treaty possible. And the bond between these two men remained strong for the rest of their lives. In 1989, my father made a trip to the United States to go see his friend Admiral Burke launch the USS Ali Burke destroyer. However, without letting his friend know that he was coming. We drove from Greenwich, Connecticut, where I live, to Bath, Maine. There were many dignitaries, mostly Navy men, around the Admiral. My father approached him and they saluted and hugged each other. But the receiving line was long and we passed the Admiral rather quickly without any time to converse. As we moved on, the Admiral's eyes, looking past the other dignitaries, followed my father for a long time. I will never forget his gaze. I have never had the honor of witnessing such a gaze from anyone else before or since. On the way home, I asked my father if he was okay, because he had come all the way from Korea and ended up seeing his friend just for a couple of minutes. In his resolute military voice, he replied, "It's okay. I saw him, he saw me. That is all that matters." This is a story of a meaningful friendship, but it is only one of many. Among the thousands and thousands of people who have fought together, there are countless beautiful human stories like these, of bonds forged in blood, sweat, and tears, bonds that last a lifetime. And those bonds have been cornerstone of the ROK-US alliance since it was formed more than 70 years ago. Looking ahead, we must continue to build and strengthen those bonds. both to honor those who fought bravely and to uphold the alliance for a new generation. I know it's what my father would have wanted. And I'm grateful to all of you for being part of this important work. 같이 갑시다. We go together. Happy birthday, Dad. We miss you and we love you. And thank you for letting me share my father's story.